as you'd like.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. My name is Doug Brunke. I am the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. We have a very special program today for the monthly book author program because we have a preview of an author whose book is coming out this next week. And it's not just any author, it's a very special author. Natsuyo Nobumoto Lipschutz is someone who we know here at Global Chamber. She's a member of Global Chamber and has presented on a variety of topics. Particularly, what's been so impressive is her ability to teach people how to give presentations that have real meaning and impact across cultures. That is really difficult to do, and she has that down really well. In fact, she's done a TED Talk on it. Now she has a new book out. So, Natsuyo, we're really looking forward to hearing more. What we're going to do is kind of do a little bit of a tag team with primarily Gloria Peterson speaking and asking questions of you about the book that's coming out on the 23rd. Gloria Peterson is also a very special leader within Global Chamber. She actually started the book author program here at Global Chamber. It was her idea and her thought. We had maybe about 10 book authors, and now we have over 100 within Global Chamber. Gloria has turned the mantle of this program over to Dana Austin. Unfortunately, she's not available today because of a family health crisis. And so Gloria has agreed, spur of the moment, to step in. Natsuyo has agreed, spur of the moment, to make the shift. And so thank you both for your leadership and your knowledge, your book authorship, and taking some time today to learn more for all of us. Gloria, would you like to ask Natsuyo a couple things?
Yeah, I think first of all, one of the things that I've always enjoyed about the book authors group, and it's the one thing that helps the reader have a connection with you when they buy your book and start reading it. But would you share with us what inspired you to write it in the first place?
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, thank you, Doug, and thank you, Gloria, for the very nice intro. So my inspiration for writing this book came from a gap that I noticed in the existing literature on cross-cultural communications. Most books or even classes, courses on this subject tend to be a little somewhat theoretical, which is valuable, but often leave leaders without some actionable insights that they can apply in real life scenarios. So, for example, maybe you can learn how people from high context culture, like Japanese, tend to use few words to communicate their intentions, and you'll have to read between the lines to really find out what's being said. So, yes may be a conditional yes, or yes may not be even a yes. And although it's helpful to know that, how can you understand them more accurately? And how do you make yourself clear beyond this communication difference? So that's the most important part, right? So I wanted to create something different by filling the gap. So something more practical, filled with real life examples that people can relate to and implement in their daily interactions. So that's why I decided to write a book just exactly a year ago.
Wonderful. You said something here that kind of clicked in my head a little bit. You talked about high context cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the 50s, 60s, there was a book written by Edward T. Hall. Do you recall that book? Are you familiar with it? But he introduced the whole high context versus low context
Yes.
culture
Yes.
path. Was that
Yep.
was his book in any way an inspiration for you with this
Yes.
high?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm quoting Edward Hall and also Hofstede. Those are two of most famous cross-cultural models. So should I go into the concept real quick or?
That would be good. That would
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
cool.
okay. Yeah,
yeah.
very briefly. So Edward Hall, an American anthropologist, said there are two categories or two ways of communicating: high context and low context.
Mhm.
And in high context culture, people rely on context. It is not necessary or even inappropriate to spell everything out accurately, directly. So people start to read between the lines, and that's the context hiding under the surface. So people in high context cultures use little words, but there's a lot of room for interpretation, and it's your job to accurately read that context. Whereas in the low context culture, um, it's also called the culture of verbal messages. Um, so people speak more directly, explicitly, and logically, and which means tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you have told them. And they also tend to focus more on individual excellence rather than a group harmony. So there is a huge difference between high context communication method and the low context communication way. And many Asian countries tend to fall under high context. And I'm Japanese, I'm from Japan, and Japan is one of the most the, the high context countries in the world. And the US is rather low
Oh.
context. And some countries like some European countries like Germany, Switzerland, they're even more on the low context side. So I'm from Japan and I came to the US 29 years ago. So when I just came here, this very high context communication and very low context communication, the US way and the Japanese way, had a huge gap. So I made a lot of mistakes, which are great topics to talk about in this book. So I have a lot of examples in this book.
As globalization has really taken off, for the lack of a better way to put that, I personally find between the high and the low context, there is some blended. I think we have a third category that has evolved out of that. Do you agree or not agree?
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's interesting that you use the expression blended. And I think I'm calling it adapting. So you can't be, I mean, you have your own tendency, of course,
Mhm.
but over time you shift on the scale. I came from a high context culture, but I've been living in the US for 29 years. And especially my profession is strategy consulting and professional speaking. So I need to communicate clearly and logically. So my communication style shifted to
Mm.
low context. And in the book,
Mhm.
there is a story about when I shifted all the way to low context, which got me into a huge trouble. But now I know how to acknowledge the difference and how to analyze where the difference is and how big, and how to adapt my communication so that I can meet them where they are. So that's a three-step process that I call the three A's that I talk about in this book: acknowledge, analyze, and adapt. So blended is a very nice way to say it. And I think the key to effective cross-cultural communication is the adaptability, how you can adapt yourself
Mhm.
to meet them where they are.
You also mentioned your TED Talk. I'm curious, can you give us a little clip of that TED Talk?
Well, the TED Talk was done back in 2016. That was a year before I became a professional speaker. And in my TED Talk, I'm talking about something very, very personal. Um, it's called Living in the Yes. So if you're interested in listening to the whole TED Talk, search Living in the Yes and put in my name, Natsuyo, then you'll get that. But in the first part of my TED Talk, I was talking about when I was an exchange student in Washington University in St. Louis. And back then, I wasn't able to speak English that well. I thought I did. And then I came to the US, where I went to St. Louis, and I could not understand the native English speakers' English. Like, for example, someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, what's up?" And I was literally looking up to see what is up. I mean, I'm not joking. I hope this is a joke, but I literally looked up and I had no clue. So, starting with this literally a miscommunication to more, something deeper about how I perceive myself, how I present myself, how to communicate my thoughts were so different. So in this TED Talk, I'm talking about how I just, my anxiety and my fear and my frustration all built up. And and one day someone came up to me and said, "How come you're so antisocial?" And I burst into tears. But that turned out to be a breakthrough for me
Mm.
in a cross-cultural situation. So the rest, listen to my TED Talk.
Yeah, we have a lot of colloquialisms, and I'll share a quick story that ties into one you just shared. I was doing a seminar for the University of Chicago, and one of the students, his name is Sanjay Gupta, which is a lot of Sanjay Guptas out there. But this young man was sharing that he had created a friendship with a group of Americans and was proud of that friendship. And he really wanted to understand the American way. So he's standing in a group with them and they were all kind of joking around. And then he said something rather profound, he found out later. And the minute he said it, one of the young men in the group said, "Sanjay, get out of here." So Sanjay walked away. And then they said, "Sanjay, where are you going?" "Well, you said walk away." "No, no, no, that's not what we meant."
Yeah, exactly. That's very low context, right?
Yeah,
The what,
exactly.
yeah.
I saw Jim Cook put a question or made a comment in the chat. Jim, would you mind sharing that comment? Maybe she can answer it.
The comment was, especially in the U.S., that um, we read only by skimming, headlines to skim, and we're there at either a TED Talk or a video or a webinar, Zoom. What's in it for me? So we're zooming headline to zoom, trying to get to what's in it for me. And if we don't get to answer the question, what's in it for me, we move on. How would you handle that type of communication? In other words, how do you get to what their need is faster?
Okay, well, that's a really deep question. So before I answer the question, let me lay out some foundation. So in this book, the cross-cultural communication is a huge topic, right? What exactly is it? Um, Communication itself is really huge. So in this book, I'm laying out, first of all, what is cross-culture? And then I'm breaking up cross-cultural communication into three dimensions: one-on-one communication, one-to-many communication, which is presentation, and one-to-team. It's an interactive, diverse team communication. So I'm approaching cross-cultural communication from these three angles, practical angles. So that being said, I think your question is somewhat related to one-to-many communication. Um, when I talk about effective presentation skills to global audience, or it doesn't have to be global audience, what I really want you to focus on is what I call one big message. If everyone forgets about what you said, or no one has heard of you speak yet, and like you said, you listen to the first 10 seconds or 30 seconds and then decide, oh, okay, well, that's it, I'm going to move on. Then what's really important is to clearly state your one big message. What's the one thing that you want your audience to take away? What is that one big message that will entice your listeners or audience? So to clarify your one big message is really key to, one, entice the audience, two, to clearly convey your message so that there's no misunderstanding. There's no more lower context way of saying it, or no more interpretation. Really clearly and directly deliver your message. That's one big message. So going back to your question, if it's not addressed, if your message is not addressed quickly, they're going to move on. Then state your one big message from the get-go. Mm. And I'm talking a lot about more techniques in this book, but state your one big message, but make it interesting enough, create a cliffhanger so that you don't provide the answer, the solution from the get-go, but it's somewhat related to the solution, somewhat related to the one big message, but the audience will want to listen to you more. And how exactly do you do that? It's written in this book, how to open your speech to make the first impression really strong in 7 seconds.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think at this point, because I would like some more questions coming from those attending or in our audience, but I know your book launch is also next week. So let's spend a little time on your book launch, the details, what's going on with that. Maybe hold up your book title. Tell us, number one, how you came up with the title. Maybe number two, one thing that all authors and author wannabes want to know is, what was your publishing route? Did you determine self-publishing, hybrid publishing? Do you have a traditional publisher? All those things that go into creating this amazing book launch.
Okay, great. Would it be possible if I share my screen?
Sure, go for it.
Yeah. So I'm sharing the screen of my publisher. So yes, I went with the commercial publishing. The publisher's name is Routledge. It's a UK-based publishing company. And on their page, you can find my book, and the book title is Uncover Your Message, the 3-step process for presenting your ideas effectively and persuasively, globally and locally. So the overall topic of this book is cross-cultural communication, but that doesn't mean that it only applies to the times when you're speaking with someone from a different country, because the way I look at cross-culture is what I call culture of one, which means we all have different backgrounds. We all have our own value sets. We all have different upbringings. So just because you're from the same country or same town, or even worked for the same company or went to same school, doesn't mean that your value system is same as that person, right? So at the end of the day, it all comes down to culture of one, your own unique culture. So when you're talking to someone other than yourself, that's cross-culture. So that's why I'm saying globally and locally. What you learn in this book doesn't only apply to global communication, but when you're talking to someone, trying to convince someone whose values and opinions are different than you, then that's cross-cultural communication. So that's why I put the subtitle effectively and persuasively, globally and locally. And also uncover your message. Often in cross-cultural field, the cross-culture is described as an iceberg. So what you can see, the tip of the iceberg, is only the tiny part. And there's a lot more of the iceberg hiding under the surface. And when you're talking about cross-culture, what you think is a common sense may not be so common. The common sense is all hiding. So you need to uncover the common sense, unwritten rules, or what's not being said verbally. So that's a key for effective cross-cultural communication. So that's why I wanted to title this book, Uncover Your Message.
You also have,
yeah.
excuse me, you also have the 3-step process. Can you kind of give us a little teaser on that?
Yeah, so that's the 3 A's, 3-step process, that 3 A's that I briefly mentioned earlier: acknowledge, analyze, and adapt.
Okay.
So yeah, so first you have to acknowledge that your iceberg may be different than theirs. And the second step is to analyze what the difference is and where and how big the difference is. And in this analyze segment of the book, I'm introducing Edward Hall and Gerd Hofstede, and you get to analyze your own situation. And there's a little exercise in the book as well. And the
Oh,
third step is adapt. So adapt is, again, a big topic. So that's why I want it to be practical. So how do you adapt when you're speaking one-on-one? And how do you adapt when you're speaking one-to-many? And also one-to-team or team communication. So it's this book is pretty much a cross-culture and one-on-one communication, presentation, and team facilitation, 4 topics in one book.
I'm assuming you also cover body language messages, the unspoken word in your book. You would have to.
Not as
No,
much.
not so much.
Not as much. I do mention it in the high context, low context section, but I'm focusing more on um the yeah, not nonverbal communication is another book. And that's not the body language is not my specialized area, although I do cover that, but um, I'll let other author uh, cover that topic.
Okay. And tell us about your launches next week.
Yes, it's
Okay.
on the 23rd, but you can still pre-purchase right now. And let me pull that up one more time. They're running a promotion right now. And I don't know how long they're going to run this promotion, but if you pre-order, I guess prior to the publishing date, which is July 23rd, and you can save something. So if you go to routledge.com
Okay.
and put in uncover your message, then you can see this page and pre-order with a discount.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any questions from others that are attending? Shankar, I saw you there. You're kind of part of our core group here. If you wouldn't mind, Shankar.
Well, I mean, it's so fascinating to listen to you. Um, and the whole bit about communications itself, the cross-cultural communication, we face it every day. It just feels like what you said. It's not just out there, it's right in front of you. One is speaking, the other is listening, but they're in two different worlds. And one interprets from their own uh, mechanical world that they have absorbed a lot, and the interpretation probably is accurate, but more so, it turns out the other way because we are not just communicating with our voice or our words or tone, like, uh, you know, what usually we understand as. I'm a follower of NLP, neuro linguistic programming,
Mhm.
and I think there is a way to get into somebody else's world and build that rapport, which is so important, and that's what we're addressing. So my question is really the bridging of the gap. I heard long back that the Shakespearean actors are so special because they can create an impact when they talk. The reason being they're able to experience and express. And that is so crucial in any communication that when you say something, it is not something that just mouthing the words. One needs to have the experience. And I think that's the secret sauce in being able to give it to others what you're experiencing in some form. We are able to absorb it. Just an angle to what you're saying. So do you have any comments on what I said? It would be nice to hear from you.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you. Yeah, so sharing the experience is absolutely what's the word you said? That magic sauce. Um, yeah, it's a glue, right? So I do talk about how to craft a story, a personal story strategically in the presentation part of this book, one-to-many communication of the book. Um, the story is what connects people heart to heart. I mean, logic is very important too. I mean, your message has to be logically sound, and I'm a strategy consultant, former McKinsey strategy consultant. So logic is so important for me. And I use a lot of logical thinking technique to sort out the information so you can zero in on the one big message. But when you have the clear one big message, how do you convey it so that you can resonate, your listener can resonate with you? Then that's the power of story. So, but if you're just rambling on and on and on and on about your story, then you'll lose them. So you need to strategically craft your story to convey a clear message. So that's a technique and skill. So I cover that in this book as well. But yes, I agree with you, Shankar, 100% that story is a glue to connect people. And I think, you know, a lot of business leaders may be afraid to tell their stories. Some great leaders are telling stories, but too many leaders are holding on to their own stories and not that they're not sharing because they might fear that, oh, I don't want to show my vulnerability. I don't want to talk about my mistake. Then maybe I'll lose credibility. No, you have to show your vulnerability, and you have to share your flaws and mistakes and frustrations in a strategic form of a story so that they can resonate with you. And no one wants to follow a leader who's just out there and just being full of themselves and everything they do is right. But people connect more with a leader who's more genuine and authentic, and stories can build that credibility and authenticity.
Thank you. And I just want
Thank
to
you.
add
I
that.
just wanted to add that,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
Gloria.
Yeah, I was just going to say
I,
Shankar's here from India.
I,
That's all I was going to say.
yeah. In fact, this reminds me of an American consultant who came to our city here, and we got to be friends. And he really wanted to crack the code. How do you really relate to people in India? And he was asking me, there are two ways of looking at business. And he said, do you make money first? Do you do business first and become friends? Or do you become friends and,
Mm.
create money? So I said, over here, it's really about becoming friends. And so he was trying to tell me that, the way we look at it is, you got to do some crack something, come to closure. And then we can come together and, have a good friendship. I was thinking that there is something in that about cross-cultural communication. And there was a Australian gentleman who came here and he said, I start my day at 9 o'clock and end at 5 o'clock, and all kinds of very precise ways of doing it. And he was not doing too well until he realized he needs to go to his neighbor and then play cricket with his children
Mm.
and then become friends. And then he realized that this is the way in India, business never starts, never ends. It's in the fabric of social dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's different at different places. It is
Yeah,
a
yeah,
very good value add.
yeah, exactly. And I want to comment on what you just said. Um, it, Sometimes some people are thinking, so if I go into a different culture, I have to do all the work, right? I have to do all the adjustment. It often feels
Yeah.
that way. And I would say that shouldn't be, that shouldn't be the case. And it goes both ways. But pretty often, the other person or the other party may not have the same attitude, or it may appear to be a little unfair that you have to do all the work. But that's why in the one-on-one communication segment, I'm talking about how to craft effective questions so that they can realize that there is something they can do, and they will realize, oh, there is a difference between this person and my opinions, so I can come up with something different. So good questions give the other person the opportunity to think differently and dig deeper into their thought process, look for answers within, and provide some new insights. So good questions have such a power to encourage the other person, especially from a different culture, to think differently, dig deeper, look for answers within, and come up with a new perspective. So I think, yes, if you're feeling, oh, I have to do all the work, that's not fair. Well, step back and you can be the guide to make the communication clear and more effective and create more friendship. Then, you use your technique, questioning technique or a communication technique to encourage the other person to come closer to you. So that way, you know, um,
Yeah,
it goes both ways,
it's
right?
very, very useful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm
Thank
looking
you.
at other people in the audience here, and if you don't mind, I'm going to call on you if you can ask a question or come live here. I see, and I apologize if I mispronounce the names, another one for me to challenge. Kali Prasad? Kali Prasad, are you able to join in? I see you're on mute.
Kali Prasad, yeah.
Yeah. Would you, you made a comment about you enjoyed her explaining the worlds of communication. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's a great opportunity for me to be present in this conversation. Yeah, the way Natsuyo explained her initial concept as a 7 second, as she mentioned, very precisely, is excellent. The way there's either too much or too little, and how to change that is how to adapt to it is a great thing. Now here I have just one comment and then a question. The comment is that while Natsuyo was mentioning about the vulnerability aspect, I know Shankar and I are in a club called CEO Clubs of India, and particularly in the Ahmedabad chapter. We are working to try and get the vulnerability in the top people of various companies to allow themselves to learn from their mistakes, not just talk about their successes, but learn from their mistakes, from each other's mistakes, to succeed better. So in that context, I would say, are there any specific points in the team building activities within the various three approaches that you were mentioning, Natsuyo? How to bring the team together to learn better for the goals of the organization, so to speak?
So your question is, you want you were breaking up in the middle a little bit, but you want your leaders to learn from their mistakes, and by using this learning, you want your team to come together. Is that what
Yes,
you're?
yes, yes, yes.
So I think we're talking about two topics here. The learning from mistakes is absolutely necessary, right? And sharing your learnings from your mistakes is another challenge. So to do that, like I mentioned, this storytelling technique that I'm writing about in this book, I have the 6 C's of strategic storytelling, and that's the technique I'm introducing in this book. You need to have first you need to have a clear message, and you need to really describe what the conflicts were that you went through, and what was the solution, or what was the incident that influenced your situation to turn the conflicts into an improved situation. So there's a certain storytelling technique that you can dig deeper into yourself, in your past, into your past, so that you can really understand what the learning was, not just describing your failure, but clearly come up with the learning from that particular experience. So storytelling helps you to go deeper into yourself and to be able to share your learning with others. So that's one thing. And in terms of team building, it's another huge topic, but I'm introducing some facilitation skills in this book, in the one-to-many communication segment of this book. I'm trying to think. So there are so many approaches to go about team building, especially in a culturally diverse team. But as a leader, you want to be a facilitative leader instead of a more dictative leader. You need to be able to read between the lines and facilitate a conversation so that everyone gets an equal opportunity to speak up. And you need to be able to create a safe environment so that they feel encouraged to speak up. And facilitation skills would allow you to do that. Mm. And also, sometimes bringing a facilitator from outside your company, outside your organization, and give a fresh, look into your team might be helpful as well. I mean, I can keep going on and on about, what else you can do in your team building. I mean, that's one of my strong areas of corporate training. I do a lot of corporate trainings for global culturally diverse team and facilitate their conversation to build a team and make the team into a high performance team. And sometimes I facilitate the conversation about their midterm strategy or short-term strategy that are aligned with the corporate goal or long-term strategy. So facilitation skills, building facilitation skills is a short answer that would be helpful to tie the team and turn the team into a high performance team.
Thank you.
That's great. Super. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I see we have Nicole here. Nicole, are you able to come live? Do you have a question? Okay. How about you, Theory? I see you there. There we go. Okay, well, we're back. Shankar just came up. Okay, we have a couple of other people, but maybe they're in a situation where they can't unmute themselves. So going back to Jim, do you have any other questions that you'd like to ask now that you've heard a lot more about what her book is all about?
I think my last comment will say a couple of things on the chat. Teach once, learn twice.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, I found that to be, especially on YouTube and all that, to be a very, very interesting way to start asking for questions. I'm done.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I just, I basically have no more to really add to the conversation right now.
Okay, well, your book is definitely a must-have. Definitely a must-have. And I think at this particular point, I kind of passed the baton back over to Doug to kind of summarize everything that has transpired during this 1 hour.
I love the conversation, and I love some of the key points that I heard today. And coming back to what Natsuyo mentioned about crafting, for some reason that really stuck in my head, that there is a science around all of this. And Jim's original question about, this problem, and by the way, every problem is an opportunity. And the problem that he raised is the actual opportunity, which is people are only listening for what's in it for them. And Natsuyo quite expertly answered that question to say it's not a problem. It's actually something you can use. What they're looking for them, you can succinctly give to them in your presentation. Just do it quickly and craft it ahead of time. And if you're crafting it in a way that gives them what they need, they're going to listen. Or at least that's what I heard Natsuyo, heard you say in a very expert way.
Yeah.
I read through the context of what you're saying, and I
Yeah,
really
that was a
appreciate
great summary. Thank you.
Is that how you would see it as well? I mean,
Yeah,
because
yeah. I mean, definitely there's a lot more. But in a quick summary, you did a great job. Yeah.
what final comment would you like to make about the book, and what you'd like to have people take away from the book?
Yeah. So one thing I really want to emphasize is that in a cross-cultural situation, and again, when I say cross-culture, I'm not just talking about country and country difference. When you face differences, it's our instinct to say, oh, they're wrong, or they don't know. But when we face differences, have a little curiosity. Be curious about your differences. And that curiosity starts, I mean, it sets the solid ground. And without being curious about our differences, there's no effective communication. There's no understanding, mutual understanding, and there's no peace. There's no friendship. So you want to be, um, curious. And to do that, I'm revealing the fourth A. I talked about the three A's, but I reveal the fourth A that is a key to unlock your curiosity in the book. And I am not revealing that fourth A in this call. You need to read the book. So there is that fourth A that is a key to unlock your curiosity. I mean, if you're not a curious person, how can you be curious, right? So this key will unlock that. So that's something I would love all of you to look forward to find out in the book. And yeah.
Uncover Your Message, available now. Not on, is it on available on Amazon, or is it only through
Amazon as well.
Oh,
Yes.
very
Yeah.
good. Uncover Your Message by Natsuyo Lipschutz. Her knowledge and the layers of context that she's laying here out for us are invaluable for those who want to get to the next level. There are multiple things I wrote down that I'm doing wrong in some areas with some particular people in different cultures, that, as you point out, we need to be a lot more curious, and we need to notice when something is off, that maybe it's me, and maybe it's something that I can do that can be better. And undoubtedly we'll be able to get a lot of those tips from the book. We're looking forward to reading it next week. Thank you for taking the time. Sorry it kind of developed the way it was, but the flexibility and resilience you showed today is, I think, another example of why we should read the book, because you're a great communicator, a great writer, and a great leader. Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Gloria, for filling in. Thanks, everybody, for attending. And if you're watching this on video and you have a question, you'd like to get a hold of Natsuyo, send an email to info@globalchamber.org. And maybe some of us, we're all on LinkedIn. We're happy to help. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Natsuyo. Thank you, Doug.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Gloria.
Thank you.